All right.
What? I saw that news story. Yeah, that's crazy.
If everybody would catch their seats. And would you close that door and close that door? We'll leave that one open for people coming in. We do still have some folks coming. They've all kind of given me the same thing of, why do you have to do this at 6 o'clock? It's Raleigh. Give me till 6:30. But I want to welcome everybody here to the Triangle Urban Republican Network's LGBT and the Republican Party Forum. I want to thank everybody for being here. And we're going to go ahead and start off with the pledge. And you want to lead it? You were standing.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with freedom and justice for all.
All right, so now the first thing I would like to do is, if there are any candidates in this room, I would like you to raise your hand. I will give you 30 seconds. We do have a candidate over here who would like to say something real quick. And I know you're a candidate.
Do you want to go ahead?
Oh, I don't need to say something. I got 7 minutes.
He's got 7 minutes.
Hi, I'm Catherine Whiteford. I'm running for House District 34, which is North Raleigh and then parts of downtown. So this is like the very end of my district right over here in Cameron Village. And I just wanted to say thank you to you guys that are coming out, and thank you to all the speakers. I know it takes a lot of courage to do this. And I just wanted to say that one of the people that is here today, and I don't know where Marco went, but he is one of the people that changed my perspective on this issue. So I'm really excited for you guys to hear from him. And something that I learned from him is that if you're truly for limited government, you shouldn't care if somebody wants to get married to someone, because it doesn't directly infringe upon your rights. So, anyway.
Thank you. All right. Now I know for a fact that we have at least a couple more candidates here. EJ, would you like to say anything?
I'm EJ. I'm running House District 41. That's Kerry Morrisville and Apex. Glad to see so many people here.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Dave Ulmer, the Libertarian candidate from North Carolina House 40, one of the most competitive races in Wayne County this year. And we're going to give the opportunity for those who truly want freedom, both personal and economic, to vote Libertarian this year.
And Peter and I had a talk beforehand, because he gets 7 minutes. He's not getting to be recognized right now. However, would anybody from the party like to say anything? I'm opening you guys if you want to have 30 seconds to say hello or anything like that.
Sure.
Sure.
I'm Michelle Nix. I'm the North Carolina Republican Party Vice Chairman, and welcome, and I'm glad you're having this forum because I think it will open up our party to more people and they can bring more Republicans. So thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. Dallas?
Take the mic from him after 2 minutes.
Good to see everybody. Matt, thank you. Catherine, for your work on this. Peter, good to see you, our candidates. Thank Carl for coming out in our 3rd district, and Michelle coming from Lenoir County. Look, we're going into a legislative session here where I think you're seeing the fruits of Republicans doing good work. We have a budget surplus here that we can give some back to the taxpayers and spend the rest on teacher raises and funding critical government services. And it's because good Republican conservative policy works when it comes to the economy. I just remind you, and there are some young folks in this room, you ain't as old and tired as I am, but it was not that long ago that the Democrats were in charge and had a $3 billion budget deficit that we inherited, along with a $2.5 billion debt to the federal government. And they had furloughed teachers. It's funny, we had this big teacher rally last week. Nice folks out there, and turned a lot into talking about pride of education, but it was a great opportunity for us. It was this opportunity to get out and tell them about the record raises Republicans have, and remind them that the people they need to go protest were the Democrats, that shorted public education actually. Does everybody know that it was a Democrat governor and a Democrat legislature that actually furloughed teachers and cut their pay? And that since that time we have raised teacher pay and given them, and that we have given people school choice, and that we have lowered the tax rates, broadened the base, lowered everybody's taxes, but at the same time created record surpluses and paid back our debt to the federal government. That's what these legislative sessions are almost all about, is removing barriers to entry in the economic system, lowering taxes, school choice, and that's what you're gonna keep seeing. And of course, on the federal level, having a strong national security, which we are working on. So, listen, thanks for being here tonight. We've got a lot of work to do. This is a turnout election. This is an election about getting Republicans to the ballot and getting people to vote for Republican over the other guys. That is, at the end of the day, what a midterm election is about, and especially an election that is a blue moon election without a signature keyword state race. Anyway, good luck to you. Thanks a lot.
I appreciate it. And we had a couple more candidates pop in here. Eric, would you like to say something? I have 30 seconds.
Sure. Sorry for my tardiness, everyone. My name is Eric Rodzip. I am running for NC House District 31 in Durham. I am running on the Libertarian ticket, but I am still a fiscally responsible candidate, and that is why I am here tonight, because that is something that we need to protect for our future, for our children's future, is the finances of our state and indeed our nation. So thank you very much for having me here today.
Of course. Look, here's the thing. First of all, any other candidates I missed? Anybody else? Last call? All right. So, one of the things you probably noticed by watching those folks speak is that, you know, they obviously are all here for very different reasons. And one of the things I'd like to point out to folks, this group, it's not defined by the fact that nobody, you know, we have unaffiliateds in here, we have libertarians in here, we have Republicans in here, and we have some Democrats in here too, to be fair. And the thing is these are all people who are open to listening, and the whole point of TURN is a dialogue. And some of you may see some literature, I wrote it a while ago when I first started to try this thing. TURN is about a dialogue, and we try to touch issues that are a little bit more difficult within the Republican Party or those who lean right. I think that's kind of what unites us. We all believe in a concept of limited government, low taxes, those sorts of things. But beyond that, we all want to have a discussion, see where we can find commonality, and where we can maybe learn from each other. Now tonight we're going to be talking about a very difficult topic within the Republican Party, and that's the LGBT issue. And I've worked really hard on this. I've put in like literally 3 or 4 months trying to put this together. I've had so much great help from the people over here, all the people with the TURN group over here. I got Kayla and Christina and Catherine and Logan and Christian, and where are you, Hannah? And Sarah has helped us with some of this. And the point is to all of this is that it's a team effort. And I'm going to start this off with some a little bit of a preface and some ground rules. First preface is you're going to hear a lot of opinions tonight. You're not going to agree with all of them. I don't care who you are in this room. I guarantee you're going to hear something tonight that you're just going to disagree with. But that's okay, because we're the Republican Party and we believe in free speech. And there's a lot of libertarians in this party that believe in free speech. And to give credit to where credit's due, the Democrats that are in this room believe in free speech too. And that's look, we have gotten into a place in this country where we don't talk anymore. And that's what this is about, is talking. People have told me that I was crazy for doing this. And that's okay. Sometimes crazy is what's necessary. Because I can tell you one thing that every single person in this room shares. Every single person. I don't know everybody in here's ideology or anything. You all care about this country. Because you wouldn't be in a room at 6 o'clock on a Tuesday listening to a political talk if you didn't. And don't forget that. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, it's the common things that bind us all as Americans that we have to focus on so that we can move forward. We could talk about our differences, but let's not forget that we share a lot of things too. Now, with that being said, some ground rules. I'm giving these folks speaking time. We've already prearranged the time that they all have. I'll kind of raise my hand when you guys have about 30 seconds left. We're going to give each of them the opportunity deliver a speech of some remarks and some different topics that are important to them. And I gave them a lot of leeway with how they wanted to approach this issue, because this is a difficult issue to talk about, and every single person's different in the way that they approach it. Okay? At the end of that, we're going to do a Q&A session. I'm sure quite a few of you are here for the Q&A session, and that is cool. But there are note cards in the back with pens. When you develop a question, I would like you to carefully set it up on this table. Please don't knock over the phone because it's running the live stream. And I will collect the questions at the near the end, and then I will sort through them. I'll get through as many of them as I can with the entire group. You'll be able to ask anybody you want. You can ask the whole group. Just address who the question is to. Put your name on there. If you feel inclined, where you're from, and your question. Keep it short, keep it simple, keep it to the point, and then we can get to more of these. I want to thank everybody for taking time out of their day to be here. I want to thank Michelle for her kind words, and I want to thank you for coming out here, because it's so important to see a party official come out here. And she's the vice chair of the Republican Party. I'd also like to point out that there are various people in the Libertarian Party here that are party officials. David, Wake LP chair, he's out here. I'm sure there's people I'm missing. Dallas came up here as the executive director. You don't have to agree. Carl's here, he's the 3rd district chairman. He may not even agree. I'm not putting on anybody that they agree with what's said here. I'm saying that they're here to listen, and that's the point. And remember this, when you're thinking about the people that you want to have represent you, that they're the people who show up, and they're the people who listen, they're the people who are a part of being in the dialogue, and you need to give them credit. It's very important. And I thank all of the people from the parties that came here. So, that being said, we're going to go ahead and get started. Justin, I believe we said you were going to go first. I'm going to just give you like the 30-second version. Is Justin is from Craven County. He is been active in the party, and he really wanted to participate in this. But I'm going to let you kind of give your talk however you want to see it. So here you go. 7 minutes. Have fun.
I appreciate it. First, I want to thank everybody for coming out. I'm not a public speaker, but I figured I'd just come out here and give this a whirl. As you see, I didn't bring any notes, so none of this is scripted. I'm not putting down anyone who did bring notes, just saying. But I believe in speaking from the heart, because that is how you really feel. First, I did want to thank Catherine and Matthew and everybody from Turn on putting this event. And I know it wasn't easy, trust me, I know. But yeah, I'm 19 years old, I go to Craven Community College. I work full-time for Dollar General as a key carrier, which is a manager. Yes, I'm shaking, so I apologize. But yeah, I used to live in New Bern, but I moved to Havelock about 6 months ago. I came out as being gay about 5 months ago now, and living in my part of the state is not the easiest thing at all to do, as I'm sure, because we do live in the Bible Belt, which I completely respect. I graduated from a Christian high school. I was raised in a Christian home, and most of my family does support me. Even my grandma, who's here tonight, she does support me. But there are a lot, well, I guess that's where I get started for good, for sure. I have met a lot of resistance, a lot of questions as to why I'm a Republican, but I'm also gay. You know, I've used this quote, and it was in my bio, that I'd rather be gay in a room full of Republicans than a Republican in a room full of gays. We've seen just how hateful that they can be, and they have been. And, you know, it's sad when they just don't accept you for, and they're supposed to be the tolerant ones here. The liberals like to preach that they're the tolerant party, how the GOP is pretty hateful and not very welcoming to anyone that is not white, straight, or old. Just being blunt, I don't care. I'm not running for office, so I'm not trying to get your vote. But, you know, I went to the North Carolina State Republican Convention last year, and I proudly voted for Robin Hayes, our current chairman, and I was a single person from my county to do so, and I do not regret it to this day. And, you know, ever since then, I kind of distanced myself from them, from that party, because I did not feel very welcome, because I had a different opinion on who they wanted me to vote for Jim Walmart. You know, I'm not even going to bring that up here, but just saying. But ever since then, I've made it my personal mission to try and make Craven County great again. And there are a whole lot of issues that I could talk about right now, but you know, one thing that has always been very near and dear to me is the youth. Like my generation, we are the future. If you do not reach out to us, you will lose us and our votes when it truly matters. The GOP has done a pretty good job at reaching out to the youth, but the Democrats they have a lot of weaponry and lies that people will believe. And it's sad. They have the advantage over the minorities. They have the advantage over the LGBT community. And that's something that has to change. And if it doesn't, then we could very well see a blue wave in the future. And it's sad and pathetic. Just because someone believes differently than you does not mean you have the right to silence them. Or not to at least listen. Which is why I'm glad to see Republicans, Democrats, and Libertarians here, because that does truly show that you want to listen to other people's points of view. Now, there's a whole lot I could talk about with the gun control. There's all that sorts of stuff that the Democrats will politicize, especially with the recent shooting in Santa Fe. Now, Republicans are known for their gun-toting policies. Now, I'm not saying I disagree with that, which I don't, because I own 2 weapons myself. And I am a proud card-carrying member of the NRA.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, you know, I work hard every single day, whether I'm at work or I'm out talking to voters, which is what I did in the primary season. I volunteered for the Scott Dacey campaign, who was running for U.S. House in the 3rd Congressional District against Walter Jones and Phil Law. Now, he didn't win, but in the process, I got to talk to a lot of people about, you know, how they felt about the Republican Party and why or why not they didn't support who or whoever they were voting for. Now, most of them came out, they're like, we honestly don't know who we're voting for and we don't know why. Come on, people. We have the internet. I mean, come on. But it is not easy being a gay Republican. Because I have a lot of friends that I grew up with that have turned their backs on me simply because I like men. You know what? I don't get there's a lot I want to say right now, but I can't. But, you know, it pretty much who's going to win the White House in the future and the House and the Senate is who has the bigger tent. And that was pretty much in the Wilson Times, as I remember, who has the bigger tent. Now, abortion, it's pretty self-explanatory. I don't believe in killing children for any reason, whether it's the mother's health or whatever. Rape, you know, it's pathetic. But, you know, there is no reasonable excuse for killing children, unborn children, children who do not have a voice. And it sickens me to see the Democrats openly pushing for more, you know, access to abortion with Planned Parenthood. But thanks to President Trump, he has started the process of cutting funding to Planned Parenthood, which they mainly deal with abortions and providing abortions and referring women to have them, simply because most likely they don't want them. 9 times out of 10, that's the case. But, you know, I was a member of a Facebook group online. It's called Gays for Trump. And, you know, they're a great group of people, and it's sad to say that some members are extremely, like, they're as far right as you can get on the political spectrum. Like, it's even though they're gay, most of them. But, you know, it's just nice to be able to feel welcome, especially here in the Republican Party, because I'm not going anywhere. I don't give a... Man, I want to say a lot, but I can't.
I know, but you're fine.
I know. But, you know, I do appreciate y'all coming out, but, you know, there's a lot of things. If you want to talk to me after the Q&A session, of course, but I'm not going anywhere, and I'm not trying to move the party to the left, as some have claimed, but just more equality and tolerance in the party.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
By the way, just to let everybody know, I'm going to be kind of a stickler for time, so do understand. I want to make sure everybody has the opportunity to speak. Patrick, I'm going to go ahead and have you go up next.
Okay.
You've got your 7 minutes. Patrick is is a libertarian here. He is the secretary of the local Libertarian Party, and he also is the president of
the chair of Outright Libertarians. I'd also like to recognize Eric Rodsep, who I took over for.
Yep.
Thank you, Eric, for all your service to the GSM community. You made my transition very easy.
And you have taken it on 100%.
Thank you so much, Eric, and I'd like to recognize all of my fellow libertarians in the room. Thank you so much for your support. Sarah Brady Wagner, Olin, Rich, Dave, Ken, and thank you for hosting this event. As Matt said, I'm Patrick Bowersox. I'm secretary of the Wake LP and also current chair of Outright Libertarians. I've been involved in the party, got involved earlier this year. I remember my first meeting, met Dave and Ken, and I said, I'm looking for a party where I can be me. I can be Patrick, not Patrick the gay guy. I can be Patrick, and I'm not labeled as Patrick the gay guy. I fight for human rights. Gay rights, GSM rights, those are human rights to me. Nobody has the right to legislate anybody's lifestyle. We have no business telling anybody who we can sleep with, who we have relations with. And also, I was a Republican at one time, grew up in Connecticut. I was a Republican. And unfortunately, the Republican Party in North Carolina is very different from the Republican Party I was used to. The Republican Party in Connecticut I was used to is we had a Republican governor who was the first governor to pass same-sex civil unions without a court order and allowed the adoption for same-sex couples, for children, without a court order. So those were the types of Republicans I was used to, and I came down here and I didn't get that. And when I would speak up and go, well, you might not want to tell people you're gay, I would hear that. It's unfortunate, but it's true. But in the Libertarian Party, as I said, I can be me. And Outright has done a tremendous job of outreaching to the community. And and Libertarian Party has supported marriage equality since its inception in 1971. And our first presidential candidate was an openly gay man in 1971. To have that kind of bravery to step up and be an openly gay man and run for the highest office in the land, that's huge to me. And I walk in and I'm welcome. And everybody in our state chair, Susan Hogarth, our county chair, everybody comes to our outreach events. We had a table rocking at Out Raleigh, and we have 2 LGBT GSM candidates, and Eric Rodsep and Robin Pegram. So I feel like I'm home with the Libertarian Party. I don't have to feel like I have to say like, well, I'm not that type of, I don't believe that. I know there's people trying to legislate people's lifestyles. Libertarians don't believe in legislating people's lifestyles. Libertarians believe you have the right to live the way you see fit. And nobody has any right to tell you any different. Sorry if you can tell I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm very passionate, and I'm just so proud that I have so much support here and everybody. And I'm not here to tell Democrats they're wrong. I'm not here to tell Republicans they're wrong. I'm here because I'm a libertarian, and that's what I believe. And I think it's great that the GOP is trying to reach out to this community. But we've been reaching out to this community since 1971. And we're not going to stop. And we won't put up with candidates who will try to legislate against the GSM community. So I might be a little short, but I'm speaking from the heart here. As I said, all you other guys, I appreciate what you're doing as well. GSM is the new term. It is the original term that was coined by the Libertarian Party in 1971. It's basically LGBTQ has become 17 letters. Gender and sexual minorities is what GSM means. So it equates everybody, and we also we think government has no business being in gender identification. Some transgender people are some of the bravest people I know, and we have no right to tell them how to live their lives either. Good. Thank you, everybody, for listening to me. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, man. Like I said, you're going to hear a lot of different perspectives. Also, real quick, trying to bring the temperature down in here. I apologize with some AC issues, but the doors are open, so that should help. Because it's much cooler out in the hallway. All right, coming up next, Hussein. Yes, it is your time.
Your turn, buddy.
I'm just going to let you introduce yourself. He's very good at introducing himself.
Be a renegade. My name is Hussein Hill. How's it going? I run a journalistic outlet online called Infidel Rebel. Check it out, please. Please, seriously, check it out. Infidel Rebel, right now. So, I used to be libertarian. I'm going to kind of branch off of the last speaker's introduction. I used to be libertarian, and I do believe that there is reconciliation to be made on the social political with the Libertarian Party as well as the Republican Party. Unfortunately, and I do say this with lament, I'm glad to see that there are some Democrats in the room, but unfortunately the Democratic Party is ensconced with identity politics and cultural Marxism, and that's a problem. So before I get into, actually no, I'm just going to dive right into it, because really, this conversation, this discussion that we're having, it both tires and infuriates me, because it is based upon two seemingly adversarial ideologies that refuse to see eye to eye with one another, and they are both actively adding to the downward trajectory of the decimation of our very nation. So let's start with the Christians and traditionalists. We're going to go point by point. Point number one with Christian traditionalists, one thing you need to realize, your respective theological doctrines are not irrefutable scientific proof. Point number two, the nation was never meant to be a theological regime. Never meant to be. Reverence for religious morality is not the same as theological authoritarianism. Point number three, yes, three has three. It is hypocritical. It is hypocritical and also infantile to benefit from creative and artistic endeavors that come from industries that are filled, one might say disproportionately filled, by individuals of non-heterosexual persuasion. I use the word non-heterosexual because I find LGBTQ to be more of a demeaning identity politics, cultural Marxism, sconce, postmodern, nonsensical term. I use non-heterosexual because I'm non-heterosexual. Fashion industry, gaming, tech, music industry, it's hypocritical to benefit from those industries and then simultaneously demonize us for being sinful or inherently malevolent. And point number four, the consequences of you denying these realities and not adhering to these realities can be vehemently seen in our neighbors in the Middle East, who continuously, since their inception to now, conduct gross violations of guns amongst men and women, murder, rape, mutilation, and it's in the name of a faith that comes directly from the origin of the same faiths of the monotheistic Western theological precepts. So, that's the first part. That's the first hard pill to swallow. Second one is for liberals and libertarians. You may not believe in God. You may think God and the church is ridiculous. You may think it's abscons with corruption. However, I would behoove you not to throw out this ideology with the bathwater. Absolute denial of the transcendent morality will leave a void that can only be filled with the arrogance and tyranny of men. It is worth noting that non-heterosexuals are a statistical minority of our species, and any form of massive social engineering to disrupt or to manipulate this is counterintuitive to the evolutionary lineage of our species. Point number 3, transgression rebellion is both necessary and extremely fun. Fun, come on. But, however, structure, tradition, and social parameters are paramount to any one healthy and stable lifestyle. This can be seen most aptly in the CDC's report of record high syphilis contraction within the non-heterosexual community, specifically gay and bisexual men. The consequences of not adhering to these realities or these concepts will lead to more and more health risks and visceral polarization, as seen best on the West Coast. You can see footage of street preachers, rabid street preachers calling for the death and the condemnation of non-heterosexuals and being countered with militant ideologue leftists. Now, this is something that we have to reconcile, ladies and gentlemen. We have to reconcile this, because if we don't reconcile this, if we do not reconcile our existences, our social contributions, and our benefit to this great experiment that we call America, we will inevitably push its demise further and further down the rabbit hole to decimating and deconstructing this glorious and amazing human experiment that our species produced. Thank you.
Don't forget, folks, I'm sure that this has generated lots of burning questions. Please don't forget, fill out your questions in the back on a postcard. Please put them up on the table here for me. I will start going through them towards the end here. All right, the next person I'm going to bring up is Peter Boykin. He's going to have his time here, and he's got his prepared remarks in his hand. So here you go, man. Have at it.
Today I've been asked, like the others on the stage, full forum, to talk about a subject that is important in our lives. Now, I could have talked about many a subject. I could have spoken about how I founded Gays for Trump. I could have loved to talk about the Trump administration and how identity politics played and continues a critical role in crushing the left's and mainstream fake news media's perception of what or who a Republican or right-leaning voter is. But there's an issue much more important than that pertains to all of us. That issue is the ongoing growing censorship of the right-leaning voice on social media. Every day there's a constant issue with the shadow banning and censoring of conservatives, and the common complaint is, what about my right of freedom of speech? So what can we do? And what is the true responsibility of those social media companies? This might come to you as a shock, but I'm sorry. You don't have these rights with a private organization like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and others. I know that's a hard pill to swallow, but that does not mean we don't have other ways to protect ourselves. After all, we do have certain unwritten rights of proper customer service, to be treated fairly by private organizations, and ultimately the power of the purse. It is important that we all receive a fair shake and understand this. It works both ways, for both liberals and conservatives, even though it seems conservatives could build a bigger case of discrimination. But before we can figure out how to combat this, we must understand just what the First Amendment grants us as U.S. citizens. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution provides that the Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. In general, the government may not prohibit its citizens from engaging in speech. However, that does not mean that speech may not be subjected to regulation. For example, the court has decided that the First Amendment provides no protection for obscenity or speech that constitutes what's widely known as, quote, fighting words. And some experts would also add treason, if committed verbally, to that list. Y'all do remember Madonna's blow up the White House comment, right? With that being said, the argument of the First Amendment right is not the way we make changes, but we must understand that private organizations do have the right to remove us from their network if we are breaking such examples I just spoke of. And honestly, we have no recourse, and I, for one, have no pity for those who've blatantly broken the actual terms of service of a network. But that lies the problem. Mostly those removed that broken no such policies. For example, my own official Twitter account for my campaign bid for NC House District 58 at Boykin for House was suspended indefinitely from Twitter. And to this day, I was not informed for just what policy was broken, unless pictures of where restaurants I went to breaks policy. One would think that there should be a law in place for those running for political office falling victim to such censorship on social media. After all, who needs Russian collusion when you have Twitter directly interfering with a political campaign? Of course, this is where identity politics comes to play. This is not just an ordinary candidate race, but this North Carolina congressional race involves myself, a higher profile, openly gay, outspoken, fully doxxed, Trump-supporting Republican who is being harassed daily on social media. One would think that the policies set by the social media companies would protect someone like me. But instead of being protected from others breaking these policies, the powers that be in social media have decided to turn a blind eye to such constant death threats and harassment, but instead have chosen to suppress me, the victim, instead. As much as one would think this would be a hot topic on Fox News by now, I've heard crickets about this situation, and I've learned that unfortunately, as it stands, those on the right have proven they rarely act on things such as this. Although so many people complain about it, this is a big issue. We talk about 1984. We talk about becoming 1984, but I'm here to say we are living 1984. Left unchecked, social media poses a danger as these private companies, mainly foreign-owned, can influence our lives and control us en masse and hold a potential influence for future elections. Banning and censoring of conservative voices is such interference. I find it odd, but not surprising, that CNN and other fake news agencies spend as much time focusing on Russian collusion campaign influence of the Trump administration, yet ignoring the fact that social media is allowing for direct foreign influence of campaigns by the open and outright biased censorship of right-leaning campaigns such as Boykin for House. If nothing is done, we have risked the complete shutdown of conservatives and right-leaning voices on the most important social communication structure in the history of mankind. Just like before the election of Trump, we are now facing a crisis of no return if we don't act now. This is why we must fight back. Now, how do we combat this? I call for a regulation of these monopolies and an Internet Bill of Rights being placed for consumer protection for those who use various networks on the Internet. Gone should be the practice of Internet companies having no valid communication method, especially considering that businesses like Facebook and Twitter are taking in direct income from consumers. It is only fair that those spending money in these systems have a direct line of communication. Ultimately, social networks should have systems in place to inform violators that specific rules were broken and a policy in place to allow offenders to correct their actions. We as consumers have to start pressing this issue in the court of law. Trial bases are the only way we can assure changes to what's going on. We must focus on the importance of communication and how strongly we must rise up to fight censorship. We cannot sit back and allow social media to silence our voices any longer. We must find them accountable. It is time that we all fight for our Internet Bill of Rights. I'd like to thank the Triangle Union Urban Republican Network for putting up a historical event. And as well, I'd like to extend all of you an open invitation to listen to me on Mag One Radio and my show, Mag First News, daily. Thank y'all. God bless.
So we've got 3 more speakers. One of them, however, had a situation where he had a medical situation, so he was told that he could not fly here at the very last second. So he messaged me, and he has developed a video message. So he's going to still give his speech. It's just going to be by video, so I'm going to go ahead and let that go live so you guys can see it. I'm going to do the best that I can. I don't have a projection system, but I'll keep the volume.
Hey everybody, I'm really sorry that I can't be there tonight. My name is Matthew Oberly. I just want to thank Matt and the Turn Group for putting this event on. I'm sure it's going to be one to remember, and I'm sure it's going to be one that sets the stage for many, many more to come. I know Matt's been for years trying to engage young voters and voters of all stripes and colors and bring them into the Republican Party and grow our party and expand our footprint, no matter who people are, no matter what walks of life they come from. I do serve as the Young Republican National Federation press secretary and spokesperson. I also am an advisory committee member for the state of Florida's United States Commission on Civil Rights. We typically take concerns from members regarding civil rights or the infringement of their civil rights. We hold public hearings with experts and panelists on the topic of discussion, and then we make recommendations to the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, who then makes recommendations to the President and Congress, who enacts policies to either protect or stop the infringement of people's civil rights. I also serve as the Vice President of the Log Cabin Republicans group here in Miami, Florida. We are the group that pushed really hard to get the endorsement of Donald Trump by National. We were unable to assist in that effort, and so we fought for the ability to endorse him as a club. I do stand behind our president, and I do believe that he is the most pro-LGBT president that we've had in, frankly, the history of the country. He's the first president to assume the office of president as pro-LGBTQ. So I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about engaging Republican voters, growing our party with the inclusion of LGBTQ voters, and how we do that necessarily. I believe in the Big Tent methodology that you can be 60% Republican, 80% Republican, 65% Republican, or 100% Republican, as long as you believe in the values of limited government, freedom, individual liberty, and the right for the American people to make their own choices, then I think you belong within the Republican Party. I don't think that being LGBTQ is a necessarily blocker for people to join the party. And I think as Republicans, it's really critical that we remember that this tent is big and that different levels of value or different levels of republicanism are okay. We're the party of ideas, and ideas come in different shades. And I think it's really critical that we engage young people on the LGBTQ issue, because it's an issue for young people that their friends hold dear. It's an issue for young people that's on the forefront, and it has been for much of our generation. So I think to grow the party, it's critical that we engage LGBTQ people and their allies. I think that's really critical. An ally is somebody who might not be a lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender, but might be their straight friend. Talking about economic issues really is how the Republican Party wins. And I think talking about family values with Republican people, with LGBTQ Republican people, or just LGBTQ people in general, is how we win. Low taxes, enabling your family to have more money in their pockets and invest in the future of your family. That's really how we win. And a little fact here is that many congressional staffers on both the Republican and Democrat side happen to be LGBTQ folks. I have a lot of friends who work on the Hill who are gay and who are Republicans, and they are seen as leaders within the party. And we've seen our party grow over the years to accept, embrace, and put forward gay Republican leaders. And I think when we're talking about millennial voters, this is a critical issue. This is an issue that will either keep people or allow people to join the Republican Party. I think when we talk about millennial voters, this is a tenet to their beliefs. They believe that everyone should have the right to have a family, that everyone should have the right to reap the tax benefits, and that everybody should be able to structure their family as they see fit. Whether that be a civil union or marriage, I think that's necessarily up to the couple in deciding how they structure their family. I think the issue of gay marriage really comes down to being able to have the same rights as straight couples. I don't believe that most gay people want to get married in the church. I'm a practicing Catholic myself. I've always felt embraced by both the church and the party itself. I've met with many of the higher up party leaders, and they've embraced me. At times when I had a partner or a boyfriend, I would bring him around to Republican events. He might not have been as conservative as I am, but I would call him more of a conservative, but he was embraced, and the relationship was embraced by the party. And I think we need to continue doing that. Not looking at the couple as necessarily gay, but looking at the couple as, or the person as a Republican voter. Somebody who's gonna turn out on the voting day, support our values at home and at the polling place. And we will continue to win over LGBTQ voters, vote by vote, person by person, couple by couple. And I think you'll see a lot of LGBTQ voters continue to join the party. I think we had a great grand opening, if we want to call it, in 2016 with our president assuming the office of president as an open and supporter of the LGBTQ movement. He is the first president, in my recollection, and I believe in all of history, to have assumed the office pro-LGBTQ. Obama did not assume the office pro-LGBTQ. It was years after assuming his presidency, or his role as president, that he became pro-LGBTQ. I believe that we have to protect the rights of LGBTQ people. I believe in non-discrimination, but I kind of believe that that should be a moral tenet to our society. In certain cases, I do believe that we need to protect those from employment discrimination and housing discrimination. Being a member of the Florida Advisory of the USCCR, the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, I do believe that at some points we do have to enact policies and legislation to protect people. Again, I really think that this is a winning issue for the Republican Party at this time. I believe that we have the ability to continue to grow the party, no matter if it's a minority voter of any kind, be it LGBTQ, be it racial minority, socioeconomical. It's our job as Republican activists to grow the party and to bring people in. It's one person at a time, it's one door knock at a time, it's one phone call at a time, it's one interaction at a time. I invite all of the younger people in the audience to join the Young Republicans. I do now serve as the National Press Secretary, as I've said, and it has been the most open, armed group I've ever met. Republican or Democrat. I have never really been a Democrat in my life, but I do believe that there's a place for every LGBTQ voter and Republican in the Young Republicans. I invite you to join your state chapter, your local chapter, and the national chapter. It's our job as young conservatives and young Republicans and young Americans to lead the way forward, to enact the policies that our generation believe in, or that our generation and generations to come will believe in. Let's do it. Let's maintain our Republican majority here in 2018 and beyond. Let's elect our president again to serve his second term as the president of the United States. He's a leader that we need. Clearly, my mount decided to give out. So I am going to wrap this up as soon as possible. I guess I'm just going to have to hold this for the next moment or so. It looks like it's trying to figure it out. There we go. That was really odd. Thanks, Matt, for putting this event on.
This has been fraught with a bit of technical difficulty. I apologize. Now I'm going to move, because it's very warm in here, I understand that. I'm going to move right in. Thomas, come on up. And then we'll have Marco, and then we'll open for questions. Thomas?
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm from the great Commonwealth of Virginia. I am the state vice chairman for the Young Republican Federation of Virginia, and I want to thank Matt and Trevor for putting this event on. I don't like using labels because our party shouldn't. We are united on some principles of limited government fiscal responsibility and a strong national defense. That's why I'm a Republican. I'm here to talk about what happened in my state briefly, and give some perspective on ways that I hope no other state goes through what my state did last year. We're one of 2 states that almost lost our House. We had a 17-seat flip, and we lost the governor, we lost the attorney general, we lost the lieutenant governor, and it's been a trend in Virginia for about a decade. The last time we had a Republican sweep of our top statewide was in 2009. I was a sophomore in college. And one of the reasons why I can say this is because of outreach. Our party sometimes was afraid of going out into communities where it didn't agree with them morally. They were afraid of the unknown sometimes, and often shun away a lot of Republicans who happen to be gay or lesbian. And that was probably one of the most disheartening things ever. As our party now, under the leadership that I'm in now, we're trying to grow that. I'm fortunate to be on a board where there are members of the LGBT community. I'm fortunate to work with them. I'm fortunate to have people who are evangelical. I'm fortunate to have people who are in the liberty movement on my statewide board now, because that's how we grow the party. We don't agree on every issue. We've had issues come up in our wire board meetings where we've been split. And that's okay, because we still go out there and we knock doors for our candidates. My advice to you all here is listen to each other. It is okay to disagree. I'm on a local city committee where my chairman is 40 years my senior. I'm his vice chairman. Trust me, we do not agree on every issue. We have a lot of heated conversations. But at the same day, we're putting up signs together. And I can tell you right now, he'd vote for a gay Republican before he votes for a leftist Democrat every day of the week. And and even through those disagreements, we always find common ground. Those kitchen table issues is common ground. Taxes, military. I live in a region where, I live in the biggest military region in the country, Hampton Roads. I'm fortunate to have Republicans who are active in our Pride Fest. I'm fortunate to have Republicans that are beginning to be party officials say, hey, we need this demographic or we're not going to carry Virginia again. And I'm excited to be here to say that to you all. I'm a little bit nervous because I recently started telling people who I was about a year ago. And since it's going to be live, the whole world's going to know, including my family. I'm okay with that. Because I'm still a Republican, I'm still a conservative. I went to Liberty University. I graduated in 2012 as class president.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was, I'm going to tell you right now, I've told some of my friends that I was in class with, they've been standing behind me 100%. I've had people, state senators, tell me, don't let people use you because of your identity. I'm a double minority. I'm black and gay. Don't let them use you. Your name is Thomas Turner, and you're a human. So, I guess my advice here is, listen, you don't have to agree with me. I don't expect you to agree with me. Actually, I really don't care if you agree with me. Anyway, the left has called me some horrible things, and some people on the right have said some horrible things to me. I'll be frank with that. The left has said some glorious things about me using terminology I will not repeat in the mixed audience. And so I'm just like, I take my bullets as I go. If you guys have any questions for me or anything else, feel free to talk to me. I'll be glad to talk about anything. I'm willing to listen and I'm willing to learn. And I want to thank my friends on the Libertarian Party and the Democratic Party for being here, because as a country, that's how we move forward. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much. So, we have the next person coming up is Marco Antonio Roberts, and he is somebody who I had the privilege of hearing, and I would say the privilege of hearing, at a YR national meeting. And this heat isn't going to bother him too much because he's from Texas. He's from all the way down in Houston. He flew here on his own dime to speak at this event. And by the way, the gentleman who just spoke, he drove here all the way from Hampton Roads, Virginia, just to be here to speak with you folks. And Peter came from Greensboro. I mean, we've got people from all over the state. But Marco, you came from the furthest. So come on up, have a nice talk with everybody, and then we'll go into questions.
I have a little timer here just to make sure I don't go over my time. Let's see. Stopwatch. Start.
Let me get this computer on your way.
Okay. So, first of all, I want to just say thanks for Catherine and Matt for getting me out here. And I have to say, I'm also very grateful that the air conditioning here was so much better than where I was last week. You think this is hot? It was a sauna. It was a true sauna. And in fact, it was so hot that after my second hour of talking, people started passing out. You know, it was just really, really hot. Fortunately, my 3 hours of material are going to be condensed into about 20 minutes is what I've been told. A lot of the folks, a lot of things that have been said here, I just ditto it. You know, I agree with almost everything you guys have said. Might say it a little differently, but I'm going to try and get a couple of concepts in. And I know you, Justin, you said something about notes, and I know I have to have notes. These are my notes. You guys, you can see that. I just can't remember everything. I mean, I'll kick myself if I go home and I say, oh crap, I forgot about that. But one thing you mentioned, which is true, one of the issues that we have with Log County Republicans, I discovered when I became president of the Houston chapter, was that people's reluctance to be associated with Log County Republicans wasn't because they were gay, it's because they were Republican. A lot of gay people, seriously, would not interact with us on Facebook or social media because they didn't want their friends to see that they were Republican. And that has been a bigger issue, ironically. And for someone who's been associated with gay issues since I was in college, back since half of you were born, it's a different change. But I wanna say a couple of things. I heard that there were some Democrats here. I know you surprised me that last minute. Some Democrats here? Any Democrats? Okay. Brace yourself. No, just. But thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. I am going to speak as a Republican, though, so keep that in mind. But I do respect folks. I have a lot of Democrat friends. Obviously, I'm in the gay community, so most of my friends are gay, are liberal Democrats. And they just hate my guts, but they'll still talk to me. But I wanted to talk about a couple of things. First of all, it's true. The Republican Party, as the nation itself, has been divided for the last 30 years, and it's gotten worse. And there are measurable ways that actually is true. If you look at the votes in Congress, they've gotten more and more partisan over the years, and you can measure that. You can see it in our terminology, the way we talk to each other. When I was in college, Democrats and Republicans could actually talk and have a conversation, disagree, and have a beer. That seems to be less and less the case. In my own Facebook page, I have two. I have the one that you guys can see, and then I have the one with my gay friends. And the reason I do that is because I don't want them to see what Republican stuff I'm doing. It gets them very upset. One time, all I did was posted that I was happy to be reelected president of LCR Houston for the second year in a row. And seriously, within an hour, I lost 7 Facebook friends. They just deleted me. So it's a real issue. But the thing is, in Houston, one of the things that I'm working on is the Freedom First Republicans Coalition, is the talk that you're talking about, and it's going to talk about a little bit of how it came about. In Houston, we had something called the Houston Equal Rights Ordinance. I don't know if you ever heard of that. Well, what it was a new equal rights ordinance that was built as a Civil Rights Act, but local, and it had a lot of bathroom stuff in it. And it was peddled by the Human Rights Campaign, which is a group that pertains or pretends to represent all quote-unquote LGBT, but in reality, it's leftist progressivism. And what was interesting is Log Cabin in Houston at the time endorsed it, even though over my objections, and I'll tell you why I objected to it in a minute. But they endorsed it at the time because the thinking is what we do a lot, is we as Republicans do this often. The left, the Democrat left, tells us what the issue is and how to solve it. So often they tell us this is the problem and this is the fix. And then we Republicans tend to divide ourselves into two camps, those that agree and those that disagree, instead of saying, what should we do? Well, when Houston's ordinance went down 2-1 in a city that had voted a gay mayor 3 times in a row, while electing a liberal black mayor into office at the same time, that sort of woke people up that, wait a second, maybe maybe not everybody's into having the government tell you that you have to have trans bathrooms. There's something else going on here. And so what we decided to do is look at this issue again as, okay, we should look at this issue as libertarian-leaning Republicans. We shouldn't be looking at this as because we're gay or we're trans or Christian or whatever. And in that, we came up with a new approach. Now, this is important because, we as a party, especially those of you who are, under 30, we got to prepare new answers to the issues that are coming our way and are already here. And we got to step in front of these issues because we want to decide what the answer is, instead of allowing the left to decide what their, more government intrusive answers to those problems. Not that the problems aren't legitimate, but maybe, we stand for less government, they stand for more government. Their answers are going to be a little more government heavy-handed. And I'll give you some examples. How many of you heard of the Masterpiece Cake Shop issue? Before the Supreme Court, big deal. And then recently, a couple of days ago, I heard about that issue where a transgender person with male genitalia wanted a Muslim woman to give them a wax, and she didn't want to do it because it was against her religion. And a lot of folks in the liberal progressive left, and I think it's fair to say that as opposed to Democrats, in the liberal progressive left are going to have a hard issue with that because they look at everything by identity. Well, I got a Muslim here and I got a trans here, so who's got the most victim points? It's what they call intersectionality. How many of you heard of intersectionality? Exactly. And that means basically you get points and preferences depending on how many. This is for the movement that tells you not to look at that, but then that's the first thing they start doing is, well, let's see if you're lesbian or you're trans and you're black. Well, that gives you more points, and so you get more rights. So I think they have a hard issue here. So here's a hint on how do we address these issues. We should answer these issues looking at what does the Constitution say, and again, from a Republican perspective, what is a First Amendment right, what's a property right? It used to be that the Christian right was the one that was trying to use the government, and it did for a long time, to establish its point of view and require people to follow it. But I think, as many of you pointed out, that has actually flipped out the other direction. And it's important to note that we as Republicans should not be afraid to say, look, the right to be left alone does not necessarily translate into the right to demand that others agree with you, or the right to force them to participate in your life or to be part of it. It's not the same thing. And one of the things that people don't know, so for example, gender ideology, I know some other folks don't agree with it. I think you mentioned something about that. I think it's okay for you to say, look, if it's not okay for the Catholic Church to come into the school and tell me I have to think of a man and a woman this way, is it really right for the gender ideology people to do exactly the same thing in a different direction? Is it right for me to penalize students and say, Missy, if you don't take your clothes off in front of this person that you're not comfortable with, I'm going to discipline you, which is happening in schools. So the issue I'm trying to say here is we have got to understand the difference between tolerating opinions, and that's what we as limited government, libertarian-leaning people understand. Freedom is messy. It's complicated. It requires tolerance. It doesn't mean you have to agree with folks, but we do have a lot of folks on the left who do not want that. And just to give you an example, how many of you heard of the Canadian human rights law? Oh, you have. That's the most I've ever heard. So I'll tell you this. That law, the only reason it's not here in the United States is because, of course, we have the First Amendment. But the First Amendment is very important because in that law, let me tell you what happened to a bar in Denver that had a law like the one that failed in Hero. And this is what you tell folks about why this is important. It's not being anti-LGBT to be pro-freedom. When you hear the left tell you that the First Amendment is an excuse to discriminate, well, it is kind of. It is kind of, because discrimination is a choice. This bar in Denver is a gay bar. And how many of you know what bears are? Okay, a few. You might know. I got it. So this bar was basically told that it could no longer have a dress code of jeans and white t-shirts, no makeup and no dresses, because it promoted a gender normative stereotype of masculinity, and they were no longer allowed to cater that way. Secondly, in Philadelphia, back last year, all the bar owners and all the employees, after they had their equal rights ordinance, were told and sent to mandatory re-education camps. Well, they didn't call them that, but that's what it was, to learn LGBT sensitivity training. Now, that's what absurdity is going to, where you have pro-LGBT laws putting these business owners in that position. And what was the crime? The crime was they didn't have enough women and trans in their bars. Now, I was arguing with a human rights campaign person, a very nice girl, very nice lady, and I was pointing this out to her. I said, you know, one of my problems with some of the things you guys are doing is these very laws. And she says, well, they should have more women in trans. And I said, Sissy, how does the bar owner even know when he's breaking the law? Is there a number, a quota that he's supposed to do? And she thought about it for a minute. I see your point. I said, you can't put people in that position where they don't even know where the law is. So, a couple other items to close up here, because in the little bit of time I have. The left dominates the language, and I give you one example, and this is why we're not doing very well. Discrimination. Discrimination, when it first was introduced in the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the only thing it really meant at the time was discerning a difference. Over time, though, we've kind of gotten this Pavlovian response that anytime you discriminate, it's bad. Like if you don't let an illegal alien into the country, you've discriminated against a foreign citizen. Well, yeah, you have, but that's okay. That's actually a correct discrimination. Veterans, we discriminate in favor of veterans, so it's perfectly fine. We discriminate in employment in terms of education. Someone who's blind doesn't get to fly a plane. We don't close movie theaters because of that as well. So the left is trying to tell you that every time you use the word discrimination, you have to stop your thinking, turn off your brain, and do whatever they say, and you have to have the courage to understand, well, not necessarily. That's why in Texas we have something called the Texas Pledge, and they add unjust. So whenever you talk about discrimination, make sure you talk about illegal or unjust discrimination or inappropriate discrimination. Qualify it, but don't act like everything that you can never make a choice, because discrimination ultimately is you making a decision as to, and sometimes you're entitled in your life to make decisions as to what you want. And just to show you how far off the left is going with this, The Advocate, a gay prominent magazine for the last 40 years, started running stories about how if you as a gay person didn't have sex with a transgender person, you were anti-trans. If you didn't have sex with people of the opposite race or some other race, then you were sexist. And I'm going, well, gee, by that definition, being gay is sexist then, because it doesn't make any sense. And then there was a story about straight guys are discriminating gay people if they don't agree to have sex with their friends, which is ridiculous. So one last example. There are other words like that I invite you to talk to me about later. Gender versus sex. They don't mean the same thing, folks. So don't say gender when you mean sex, because it's not the same thing. The left, the gender studies movement introduced that term back about in the 1980s for a particular reason. So you just need to be clear what that means. I don't have time to explain it to you today, but remember, when you argue with someone, the first thing you should at least do is, what do you mean by gender, and let's talk therefore. Then you can have an intelligent conversation of what you're going to say again. And I don't know how much time I have, but so one other thing that I like to say in my presentations, which I can tell you, they're a lot longer than this, but I'm just packing what I can in the few minutes I got. I want you to think about this. People say, where do you draw the line? You know, Marco, you're just promoting discrimination. I said, no, I'm not. I mean, not unfair discrimination. Where do you draw the line? I said, I draw it where the Civil Rights Act does it. Now, how is that different? This is important to know. What was different about that ordinance in Houston, or the one in Denver, or the one in Philadelphia from the Civil Rights Act? The left will tell you that it's just like the Civil Rights Act, that these laws are just the same thing. They're not. They're not the same. Did you know that even if you added sexual orientation and gender identity to the Civil Rights Act, it still will not make the florist get you a flower arrangement for your wedding? It still wouldn't do it, because it doesn't cover that. See, the nice thing about the Civil Rights Act when they did that is all they did was they reversed something that had been going on for 100 years. But they didn't expand on it. And in the Civil Rights Act, to render the service, the hotel room, the hospital care, serve the pizza, buy the movie theater, you never have to ask the person, what do you think? What's your belief system? What religion are you? Are you gay or straight? You don't have to. But these new laws cross that line. They cross that line and they start forcing people to get involved in activities that are very personal about their belief systems and say you have to involve yourself with me. And that's contrary to the First Amendment's freedom of association element that says you get to choose with who you associate in your own life. You get to choose what contracts you get to write with. It's very different to go to a restaurant and order a pizza and then to serve you pizza than to say to the owner, you know what, I want you to cater my wedding and you can't tell me no. And it's going to be, you know, I have 10 wives and we're all going to get married together. And no, the person has the right to say no. And a gay atheist also has the right to say no to the Family Research Council. Said, I'm sorry, I don't support you know, you guys, because you are anti-same-sex marriage, and I don't want to spend the next 10 weeks working on your, you know, anti-gay event. People have that right. So when people ask you, how do you make the difference, where do you draw the line, I always say, Civil Rights Act. Wherever that draws it, that's where I accept it, and not one a step forward. Because if you do it, if you start expanding that, then you are you end up like those bars in Philadelphia. You start losing the ability to have the kind of business you always thought you wanted to have, to cater to the community you wanted to have. Jewish delis can become a thing of the past. What would happen to a Jewish deli? It says, we have a kosher kitchen. I can't do a Muslim wedding. Well, you're discriminating. Well, of course. So that's important. So is that clear about how to draw the line? Civil Rights Act. When someone says, where do you draw the line? Civil Rights Act. Why? Because I don't have to know anything about you, about what you believe, in order to provide you the service you're asking for. In the end, just to give you an example of how I would like to encourage all of you to, when you are going back to your Republican candidates, a lot of you work for Republican candidates, about how to think about this issue, LGBT issues, GLBT or GSM issues, however you want to call them. Actually, I like that term better, to be honest with you. It's this. Imagine Mayor Bloomberg of New York becoming the President of the United States. Oh yeah, right? Republican, right? Imagine he says, you know what? You know, just like he was trying to control the soda sizes and the menus of the restaurant, I mean, down to the detail of what little things people could do to make them healthier. Imagine he decided, you know, I'm going to do an Obama-style plan because we have studies that show that broccoli is good for you. And because of that, we're now going to require that when you file your tax returns, you show us all your broccoli receipts to prove that you're eating enough for your family because it'll reduce healthcare costs and so on. You know what Republicans would do? Just to show you how dumb we are. Republicans would be outraged and they go, this is amazing, this is horrible, terrible, terrible. How dare you tell me that I have to eat broccoli? And they would begin all these initiatives and laws to protect the right not to eat broccoli. Well, that's okay, except that, is it really the right not to eat broccoli that you're supposed to be protecting? Because guess what? First of all, if you make it about that, now the debate has shifted to whether broccoli is good for you or not. And then people start arguing with you about that. Well, of course, broccoli is good for you. And then next thing you know, you've lost the debate over a totally separate issue. And guess what? Even if you win, you still lose. You know why? Because let's say you managed to get past all that, and you still got your anti-broccoli law saying, you know, I finally secured my right not to eat broccoli. What about spinach, celery? You actually, by definition, implied that every other right you didn't spell out is now fair game. That is what happens with same-sex argument, folks. These laws, it's not that people don't have the right to disagree with same-sex marriage. Of course you do. People do have the right, and I defend that right, okay? You don't agree with it, you have the right, and I don't think people should be fired for that. Andrew Sullivan, the father of the gay rights movement, said people shouldn't be fired for that, all right? And yet we have people saying, no, you should do it. But don't defend it that way. The larger issue is the freedom of speech and your property rights. And I promise you, if you argue that way and don't argue about same-sex marriage, but argue about freedom of speech and property rights for everyone equally, you got a lot more people to support you. Atheists will come on board. A lot of gay people will come on board and say, hey, I'm for that. If you're not making it about that, if you're not saying only one idea is protected but all, then I'll support that. We have in Texas something called the Freedom First Republicans Coalition that is based on this idea. And it has joined the Texas Young Republican Federation, as well as the Republican Liberty Caucus of Texas, and the Log County Republicans of Texas, in this new concept of don't let the left bait you into bad answers. And don't be afraid to defend what is legitimately yours. And I would like to say that, how many of you heard that booth issue that happened in Texas where we didn't get our booth? A few of you heard about that? Our strongest advocate at the state committee, that is the highest governing committee in the state of Texas as far as the Republican Party, was someone who opposed same-sex marriage. And he said, I don't agree with Log Cabin on this, but you know what? They're conservative. I agree with them 80%. They should be here. And so that's the thing. We opened the door, and our Log Cabin tent became bigger by allowing other people who don't agree with us on everything, but they agree that in every other way, they did agree that we are entitled to equal rights under the law. And we have gotten social Christians who've said, you know what? If you say it the way you say it, if you're telling me it's Civil Rights Act, yes, we are okay with adding housing and employment non-discrimination based on sex, sexual orientation, and gender identity. If you're telling me that you're not going to come and start telling me that I've got to be part of your life. I want to close with this. I know I've said it 10 times, but here it really is. It's just a thought that I just always like to repeat over and over again. And that is, you cannot defend freedom unless you are prepared to defend it for all. To defend freedom and liberty only for yourself is to not defend it at all. And so I am committed to every Republican, Libertarian, Democrat. I don't care whether you agree with me or not. I will still defend your freedom to say what you want to say, run the business the way you want to run it, and control the way and control your life the way you want to run your life. So that's my comments. Thanks for having me.
All right, so I have a quick unexpected announcement. EJ Wilder, who's running for NC House District 41, was kind enough to purchase pizzas for everyone, and he offered to give everybody a slice of pizza if they would like to. They're out there, there's a wide variety, and he is going to be he just wanted to kind of let everybody know he was here, he was supportive, and that he has a fundraiser coming up when?
Tuesday.
Next Tuesday. So he just wanted to, do a nice thing for everybody here, and I thought that was very kind of him. He just came up to me, he's like, I'm ordering pizzas. I'm like, okay. So thank you so much, man. If anybody would like to grab that, and then we're going to get into questions and answers. So if anybody wants to grab, we'll take 2 minutes, and then I want to come back and do questions and answers.
Great job, Patrick.
Thanks for coming.
Oh, you love it. You made it.
Sarah, thank you for coming. I appreciate it. Huge.
Yes, that's our
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but he's got some good presentation.
Great presentation, man. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Appreciate it.
Are we getting pizza? I gotta get rid of this phone because I know I look like a cow. Actually, black.
Sir.
Morning.
Morning.
They did do
Sharp
one
buttons.
pickup. I think they'll
Thank
make
I'm good. Having fun? Oh yeah. Thank you very much.
For those of you who want to see the questions and answers, you should be here, because if you're not, you can't see the questions and answers. We're going to go ahead and get started. I need to get my panelists back.
They may not want to answer the question.
No, hold on. All right, Peter. Marco, you around here somewhere? Oh, I know. It's very warm. Okay, so we've got a little bit of time. We're going to try and get to some questions, okay? Now, I went through a couple that just seemed to be representative of a lot of questions that I got. In other words, if I got kind of the same question several times or something close, I tried to pick those. What is the biggest obstacle, and this is not directed at an individual person, so this is for anybody who wishes to make a comment to this. I'm going to ask that you please keep your comment to 30 seconds or less each so that everybody has an opportunity. What is the biggest obstacle to making the GOP more LGBT friendly, and how can it be overcome? Who wants to take this? And by the way, you don't all have to answer, but I'm saying raise your hand if you have some comments. Marco?
In 30 seconds, I think the biggest obstacle is being reactionary. You don't have enough people looking at the issues and stepping back and not letting the left provoke you into stupidity. So what you've seen across the state, from Arizona to Indiana, repeating the exact same mistakes, North Carolina all the way up to Texas. There's ways to address these issues. But unfortunately, we have too many people in the Republican Party that all they see is the red bull in front of them and don't realize that there are other alternatives and other ways to address this issue. So 30 seconds, that's my answer.
Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add? All right. Next one I have, as a member of Log Cabin Republican since 1999, I'm interested in the efforts to start a chapter. What's being done? And I don't know if a particular panelist can approach this. We literally just hoped if a lot of people got into the same place, they might wish to organize. I'm not in the LGBT community. I can't start a law counter Republicans, but there are people here, and I'm going to encourage, I'm kind of addressing this as a general sense, is why don't you all talk afterwards, get to know each other, communicate, network, you're all here. If you want this to happen, make it happen. I can't make that happen. I run a group to talk things, talk about things. How can the NCGOP go from being the party of HB2 to being a party that is inclusive of the same community they vilified? Does anybody want to have a take on that? Come on.
And I never understood much of the HB2, but to let people know they made too much of an issue about bathroom issues. Because frankly, when it came to a bathroom, all we were doing was asking to share a sink. That's an issue you can get over with. The problem is the degeneracy of trying to get more and more and more. So do we give them bathrooms now and then tomorrow we have to give them showers? That's the problem that's going on. So we got to get over it by just allowing certain things, but do it conservatively, progressively. Right?
And any other thoughts on how to move the party from being a party known for HB2 to being something more inclusive? And for those of you not from the state, I mean, like, the bathroom bill is what they're referencing for anybody. I'm not going to assume anybody knows our state's issues. Wait a minute. People heard about this? Does anybody else have any thoughts on this issue they'd like to add?
Just like really quick, because I go to school in Charlotte. The main thing was that Charlotte City passed an ordinance, or City Council passed an ordinance that basically said all private businesses have to let whoever into their bathrooms, and our supermajority Republican General Assembly, our Republican governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, it was all red, and this the city was basically saying, screw what private companies want to do, we're going to make you do this. So it was them having a reactionary reaction.
All right, Marco, come on. There we go. See, I got you. All right.
I got to get this one. I'm sorry. And it's just, look, folks, this whole bathroom thing. Number one, let me just say about the civil rights law. What does the law say? The federal civil rights law says you are not required to segregate bathrooms, but you are allowed, according to federal law, to do it by sex. It's permissible, meaning that if you have them by sex, you can't be taken to court. People are flipping that inside out to mean the opposite. This issue with the trans, I think the best way to address it at this point, in the time that we have, we can't do it, it's very delicate. But I do ask folks that what the definition of a man is or a woman is a matter of individual decision making at this point. With this HB2 thing, it was a response, right, to something else, just like the Houston thing was. The SB6 in Texas was almost the same thing. It's a response, but it's not the best response. It's what I call a broccoli law. You're going for what they've put in front of you, and they gave you a bathroom law. Again, when I was debating with the columnist in the Houston Chronicle, she's saying, well, the Republicans started the bathroom laws. No, you guys did. Now, I agree, the reaction isn't any better, but let's be clear, the first people who came up with the idea of putting $5,000 fines if you didn't police bathrooms according to gender ideology was the left. And gender ideology is just as much a system of belief as Christianity or Islam or all the others. So, thanks.
I let you go a little over because here's your notes. All right, next question I've got here. For those who are not Republican currently, which I guess this is pretty much directed at you, could you imagine a circumstance in which you would consider returning to the Republican Party, even voting Republican? What would it take?
Okay, this is going to be short and sweet. Absolutely not. I apologize, folks, but I am a libertarian at heart. I am not a Republican. I have other differences. I'm not here to discuss those differences. We're talking about GSM rights. If anybody wants to have a discussion about where I differ with the Republican Party, it's not just GSM issues. I'm not a one-issue voter. I may be gay, but I'm not a one-issue voter.
And the other part, could you ever see yourself voting Republican?
I have voted for Republicans and Democrats and Greens.
Mm-hmm.
I will vote for liberty-minded people, but I will not vote for people who will legislate against GSM rights or GSM liberties.
All right. Many traditionalist Christian Republicans may feel accepting LGBT people is a gateway into moving the party left in other areas. How would you respond to this? Why is this not true? Hussein, come on.
It's funny too, before this event, there was a gentleman on the Facebook page who was having this very conversation. Why is that not true? Well, at the end of the day, I think we need to start defining what leftism is on a socio-economic standpoint. Leftism is a compulsion for massive government intervention within one's life. Our country was never meant to be a theocratic regime. And I think Christian fundamentalists, and I have a lot of friends who are religious right, and I mean are religious right, and it doesn't bother me whatsoever. But one thing they do unfortunately, and it goes to what you were saying, it's a reaction. This is the reality. I'm just going to play it out. I'm just going to lay it out sweet and simple. The alt-right, the things that you call the alt-right and the far-right fundamentalist Christians, they are a reaction to the massively entrenched mainstream culture of leftism in today's America. That is what's happening. Like the bathroom legislation that he mentioned earlier. That is the reaction to people who are asking a very valid question of where does the line of defining what a biological woman is and a biological man is, and how does that affect our society. So I think we need to look at the ideology of socioeconomic liberty and socioeconomic sovereignty as opposed to, and not conflate that with morality, because morality is not leftism. That's just your specific version of morality. So.
All right. You got this one answered. Some people put their names on these. In respect to Christian values, would it not be more fair to all to not push for condemnation of LGBT individuals, instead call for the... Oh, okay, that's why I picked this. I'm going to have to paraphrase this because the question, I'm going to paraphrase it. How do you feel about literally just removing the state from the marriage question entirely versus... Keep this one to 30 seconds because I think several people want to say something.
While I do want the state out of marriage, I do support the Marriage Equality Act because it is a defensive mechanism. If you're going to have marriage laws as they are, they need to be for everybody, not just exclusionary. So, in a perfect world, I would say get the government out of marriage, but when people try to legislate people's lifestyle, you need to have defense mechanisms in there for the doomsday scenario. Thank you.
Anyone else? Hussein?
Get the state out of marriage. That's it. Like the state has decimated the nuclear, traditional, and heterosexual family, and the state is obviously not beneficial to regulating the lives of non-heterosexuals. So get the state out, or we will destroy our society.
All right, Marco.
Roger Williams, a Christian evangelist in the colonial era, warned about people really did warn about the separation and not having government involved with the religion, not because they were worried about the government, but because they were worried about religion. I think what we've learned here with the introduction and inviting the state to manage your sacrament, this is what happens when you give the state control over one of your religious beliefs. It starts changing it for you. So I would say, get it out of government.
Yeah, the state should be out of gay marriage. Actually, there's no such thing as gay marriage. I didn't get in a gay car and work my gay job to get here. Straight up, that's it. But basically, it brings religion into the atmosphere, and like I get this every single day from people who try to tell me that I'm going to hell because of who I am. I tell them the only person telling me that, according to your religion and my religion, is Jesus, and that's the only way I'm getting there. So stay out of what I do. We're not forcing your churches to change. It should not be in the state, period. That's it.
All right. All right. All right, so this is a longer question. I think they're wanting like a comment on this. My issue with Republicans within the party is not the fact that there are plenty of people that wouldn't call gay Republicans a quote sick disease by a party official, but it is those that wouldn't stand up for the person and call them out. So this was an incident that happened at an event, and someone made that as part of their speech. They referred to gay people as a quote sick disease. And their issue with Republicans isn't as much the person who said it as it is the fact that no one said anything about it. So what is your comments to somebody? Do you think it is important for people to stand up when they hear something like that in the party? And yeah, Thomas, come on.
You should stand up. If you believe that everyone has the right to exist and they have value, you should stand up. Plain and simple. I've had that happen to me on various issues. People just stood up and said, hey, don't call my friend out like that. I'm going to stand with my brother. You know, that's where we have to be. You don't have to agree. You just got to, if you value life, stand up for your brother. It's plain and simple.
This is an interesting question. I'm going to, again, some of these I'm having to paraphrase a little. Conservatives are naturally reflexive. For a long time, the most militant and loud representatives of the LGBT community have been hardcore leftists. Is it not natural for conservatives to eye the LGBT community with at least some wariness? I'm going to kind of drop it from there because I think that's plenty of, yeah.
This is exactly the reason why I use the term non-heterosexuals. Who I choose to have sex with is not a community. That's not a basis of our culture. Tradition, history, values, my intellectual sovereignty is a basis of identity to culture. So we talk about the LGBTQ community. That's just a nice fancy way of saying the other branch of the institute, the modern institution of another leftist postmodern mechanism that's using this conversation to tear us apart. So no, I think we need to separate individuals who happen to be gay, trans, whatever you want to call yourself, from the quote-unquote LGBT community. That really needs to start happening fast.
Parker, would you like this?
Just real briefly on that, I would say that I think it's fair to question sometimes what is perceived as the LGBT community, because let's face it, I have a lot of gay friends who really do want some things that I find reprehensible. And so there's nothing lost in acknowledging, even for a very conservative Christian person, that some of the concerns are legitimate, they're there. So it's up to us to say, well, yeah, they do exist. It's not, you're not imagining it, but here's a better way of addressing the issues. So.
All right, I'm going to move to another question here. What is the single most significant civil rights issue of the GSM community, like right now?
That's a big question.
It's a big question. Somebody wants to
take
try
to answer that in 30 seconds.
I'll take that.
Try it.
Just real quick, because I'm going to change it up a little bit. What's more important, political rights or civil rights? Raise your hand. What's political? Who thinks it's political rights?
What define political?
Okay, good. How many political science majors do I have here? Okay, you guys should know this. Political right is the right to have a voice in your form of government, meaning the right to vote, things like that, okay? The right to express your opinion. A civil right is the right to enter a place of business. Different thing. Now, so having you put that this way, what is more important, having the right to influence your government or having certain protections given to you by the government?
Former.
The former. Political rights. So the most important civil rights issue, let's face it, for us now, it's making sure that our movement doesn't get hijacked into doing things that actually take away our political rights. So I know everyone's concerned about civil rights, but the most concern I have now is not allowing those civil rights to be turned into a mechanism to violate my political rights. So I know I twisted a little bit there, but.
All right, Peter.
Basically, civil rights issue with the GSM community, and we saw this last year, is the own internal issue with the GSM, LGBTQ, whatever, WKRP in Cincinnati issue. But frankly, they eat their own, because doing Gays or Trump and things like that, we were scrutinized just because of who we are. And I'll say to you, I'm pretty bad that you have a Facebook page separate and they find out about you and they catch you off. That's pretty sad, you know. But I don't care what people say. So I flat out, you don't like me, you don't like me. There's millions of people. Block.
But I want to go to parties.
All right, speaking of parties, all right.
One of the biggest issues is, to me at least, we just want to be treated equally. We want the same opportunities that straight couples get. We want the same marriage rights. We want the ability to adopt children. We want these things, and we don't want to be labeled as, well, you know, that's basically what we want. We want equal treatment. And you don't have to make a law for that. Equal treatment. Treat people equally. Treat people as people. Don't treat people as, I'm a gay person or this. Treat people civilly. And also, yes, I'm a gay libertarian, but we live in a democracy. You have the right to choose whatever political path you want to go on. I want gay people to be accepted within the Republican Party, within the Constitution Party, within the Democrats, within the Greens, whatever they choose. I want them to feel like they can be part of it. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to ask a question to the Republicans on the panel. And I'm going to have to ask this a little broadly just because the fact that there are some folks from not from North Carolina. But a lot of people have asked people in the LGBT community, how can you be a Republican when the party platform says blank? So how do you answer that question? How do you answer the question of what the current party platform looks like as it relates to LGBT issues? Do you even have an issue with it? And if you do have an issue with it, how do you talk about that subject?
The main issue that I see is when I go to GOP meetings, the amount of people that come to the GOP meetings are very low compared to the maximum amount of GOP. So in the platform, it's so easy for the not so desired GOP people to take a step up and create the platform. And that does not mean the whole platform feels that way. Look at what the platform was with the RNC and how it said against gay marriage and everything. Yet, when Donald Trump got up there and brought Peter Thiel and talked about LGBT and he said surprise and everybody clapped, everybody cheered. I went to Trump rallies, everybody loved us. So in reality, it's a misconception that the LGBT is hated by the Republican Party. It's not. Maybe a few, and I will combat those people and I will find those people.
All right. Anybody else want to tackle that? Basically, your thoughts on the platform. Do you agree with it? If you don't agree with it, like a lot of people that have talked to me about this issue in the last several weeks, and this is something I've been getting asked, is how do LGBT people answer for the party platform? Like literally, that is one of the most common questions I get asked. And I said, I don't know, ask them at the panel. But that question actually came up here, so I want to see, what are people's thoughts on the party platform as it relates to LGBT issues specifically?
Yeah. I would just say, I would kind of lead off of Peter and say basically, from what I've seen, this is one of the biggest reasons why I joined the Republican Party is that there's definitely a shift in the Republican Party to take the state out of this issue. Now in the South, because of the historical and cultural trimmings of the South, of course, this is still an issue. And I'm going to quote the title of one of my videos: "Stand against all authoritarianism." It's not a left issue, it's not a right wing issue, it's authoritarianism. There's sovereignty and there's authoritarianism. Stand against all of it. So, and actually, can I like answer a question that was already asked? Sure, cool. In response to what is the most important civil rights issue facing the non-heterosexual demographic. I'm gonna call them. Sorry if that offends you, sort of. I think the biggest civil rights issue I think that we should be concerned with, and this is something that I grew up with personally as an ex-Muslim that I actually dealt with personally recently, I'm not going to go into those details, is the influx of Islamic cultures in the West. Let me tell you, someone that grew up with Islamic culture in the West and someone that dealt with radical Islamic culture recently, that is not a culture that's going to merely go to the polls and legislate different legislations. They're not going to just write mean letters. They're going to try to kill you for your sexuality. So I think that's a conversation that needs to be had more openly in the LGBTQ community.
All right, Marco.
I suspect that your party platform is similar to what we have in Texas. I would just say a couple of things about that. You know, when we got denied our booth, a couple of folks were told us that, well, and I thought they were sincere in this. They said, you know, what you need to do is you need to make the case so that more of the folks that show up at this convention support you. I think that's right. In the initiative that we've done in Texas for the last 3 years, which is to engage Christians and to try to understand where we're together, not to condemn and attack them, but to understand where and explain where we actually can agree on what's important: liberty, freedom of conscience. I think has beared fruit. I'm happy to announce that, for example, the first log-cabin Republican ever to sit on the party platform for the state of Texas is right in front of you. And so I'm actually going to get a chance. For the first time, we're going to have, I mean, it's just one vote of 31, but I'm going to have a vote now to actually start explaining. But that's how you do it, you engage. And I do say this to everybody, whether you're trans or gay or straight or Christian or Muslim, no one can enter the arena of debate or the marketplace of ideas and demand that everybody agree with you without you having made your case. It's your obligation. If things are a certain way, it's on you to make your case. You can't just go in there and say, you have to agree with me, and if you're not, you're an idiot. That's not the way to do it, so.
Yeah. And I'm going to make a quick comment that I was going to add in the closing, but I will actually add it now, and that is, I don't care what your political stripe is. If you care about issues, be involved, because no one's going to hear you if you're not involved. And that's one thing that I think I'm kind of preaching to the choir with everybody that's in here. But tell your friends, if like they're happy or unhappy or whatever it is, tell them to get involved. Anyway, I have been requested to give I will give you 30 seconds to make a comment because you had asked to in the back. And then did anybody else want to make a comment? I will allow a comment from anybody else who would like to make one. Okay, so you and you, we've got time for like 2, so go ahead.
Marcus Cook, candidate for the North Carolina House from Chapel Hill.
No, you can come up here and get the mic.
Oh.
That's what it was going to No, I'm not counting it till you got here.
Okay. Well, we can start. I'm running for the North Carolina House, and I wanted to rise in support of the transgender community, which I have.
Speak into the microphone.
This one?
No, the one you have in your hand.
This one. Okay.
Much better.
And a couple of us are running for the House, and we'll have to vote on issues as they're presented to us. And I'm very supportive of the transgender community. And representing Chapel Hill has come to my attention that there's great sensitivity to the fact that the operations involved are life-threatening. That it's an elective surgery and it's life-threatening. And so, with friends, associates, and folks that have gone through that crisis, we don't talk about it. So I wonder if this group, it's a great opportunity for somebody who can talk about it. Can you enlighten me and give me a perspective on the health issues associated with transgender?
Well, that might be an interesting conversation at the end, because we're wrapping up here, but I appreciate the comment. And then you wanted to add a comment?
I'll keep it really brief. They mentioned, a couple of speakers mentioned before about how the left uses language, so I wanted to give you guys a couple of really useful tools before we wrap up, since I had a question everybody can answer. That's okay. We had a lot of good ones. So it'd be 2 things. Any parent with a child with disabilities will tell you that no child is born the same. And they will also tell you that no child is born wrong. So that's one. No child is born the same, no child is born wrong. I want to toss that out there into the ethos, and so you guys can use it as you please. And the second was just a statement straight up. Guys, I don't care about your skin flaps. I don't care what color your skin flaps are. I don't care what kind you have, and I don't care what you do with them. Just leave mine alone.
All right, so, and I appreciate everybody's comments. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up. I want to add a couple more quick comments here. I appreciate everybody who showed up today. I also want to appreciate everybody in this room for maintaining a respectful environment, allowing everyone to speak, and you guys deserve a round of applause for allowing that. I also would like to be clear that there was no endorsement by the party. They just allowed us to use the space, but I want to thank them for doing so, and also try, and some members were very supportive, but we're not an affiliate group. We just asked if we could use the space, and they were gracious to do so. The other thing I wanted to add is that, this is the start of a dialogue. Please keep going with this dialogue. Please keep talking to people. Try to understand each other and understand that there are people out there who might be your friends and you just don't know it yet. So remember that at the end of the day. And for those of you who have never heard of us before, please find us. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, and we're on YouTube. So you can find Turn Republican is our Facebook, and Instagram, and Twitter handle. So after this, I think we're going to wrap up, and I think some of us are going to go down to the Oak and Dagger. So if anybody wishes to come and just have the chat afterwards, please feel free. I want to thank our panelists, and a big round of applause for them coming out and participating in this. And to all those who said that this event could not be done, I'd like to beg to differ. It happened. Thank you. Panelists will come up here. We just want to grab a picture with everybody.